A quick word before we get into today's podcast. Our dogs are a huge part of the family, and like any dog owner, I want to ensure that they are getting the proper stuff. And this is why we absolutely love Butternut Box. They just make it incredibly easy to feed your dog well. Every single plan is perfectly portioned and tailored precisely to your dog's age, breed, and lifestyle. They have over 11 recipes to choose from, so if you have a fussy eater or a dog with allergies, they're sorted. The meals are delivered straight to your door frozen, so you never run out. You just leave a few pouches out in the fridge to defrost, and you're good to go. Plus, you can now find them in Maxi Zoo stores if you need to grab a pack. It leads to better digestion and healthier guts, which every dog owner can appreciate. Go to butternutbox.com/lines of enquiry and use the code lines of enquiry to get 50% off your first 2 boxes today.
GoLoud.
My name is John Sweetman, and this is Lines of Enquiry Case Notes. My name is John Sweetman, and this is Lines of Enquiry Case Notes. In Case Notes, we step away from telling one specific case in detail and instead take some time to reflect, to revisit past investigations, and to respond directly to you, the listener. These episodes are about opening up the conversation. If you have a message you'd like to share, a case you'd like us to revisit, or someone you'd like to hear from on future episodes of Case Notes, you can get in touch with us at linesofenquiry@goloudnow.com, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Lines of Enquiry Podcast to keep up to date. My guest today is Ray Kane, a retired detective sergeant with Garda Síochána. He spent more than 30 years in policing, much of it in the Garda Technical Bureau and Fingerprint Department. During that time, he examined thousands of crime scenes and fingerprint case files, making thousands of identifications across a wide range of serious investigations. Ray is now a consultant forensic expert, working on case reviews, crime scene evaluations, expert witness work and training, and currently serves as evidence manager with the Office of the Director of Authorised Intervention in Tuam. Ray, you're very welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
We know each other, Ray, how long, I suppose?
1993, I think, is when we first met.
Probably. And, you know, we've crossed paths numerous times over the years in the command and control, and then later, of course, in the fingerprint section. Was there anything that, you know, apart from me telling you it was a great spot, was there anything that attracted you to that work in the Bureau?
Well, before I joined the Guards, I was in the FCA for a couple of years, and I've always had an interest in firearms. And ballistics is something that would have piqued my interest. When I left Command and Control, I went to Sundrive Road, and as luck would have it, my sergeant on the unit was a guy called John McGee, who was a fingerprint expert who had left the section. Mm-hmm. And one particular night, I was sitting there thinking, what was I going to do next with my life in the Guards? And so I applied for, I think, 4 or 5 different courses that night. But he just picked that one out and said, do you really want to do scenes of crime course training? And I said, oh, yeah. If he'd said anything, I would have said, yeah. But it was that particular one. So he made a few phone calls, got me to the course and did the training. And like back then, you're talking, this is 1998, the Division of Scenes of Crime units around the country wouldn't have been as well staffed as they are now, well resourced. And in Sundrive Road, there was a very small unit in Crumlin that had a big division to cover. So I got to do a bit of practice. Like I had the Scenes of Crime kit in the back of the patrol car when I was driving around any crimes that happened. Rather than them having to wait a couple of days for the Scenes of Crime guys to arrive, I'd take out the kit and powder away. So I got to get a few identifications early on, you know, and said, this is good. I got that, as our old colleague Fiona Maguire used to say, I got that warm fuzzy feeling.
Yeah. So you came in then, wasn't that long after me, into the fingerprint section?
Yeah, so you were there in 97, I think.
Yeah.
And I joined in February 1999.
And of course, then you stayed there until you retired.
Yeah, just a couple of months shy of 25 years in the section.
Yeah, but like I say, I would have done the same. I would have done a long time on the quality control stuff before you moved on to even the chemical section, where you'd be developing finger marks on crime scene exhibits, and then eventually getting to search scenes of crime finger marks, and finally getting to go out on jobs. So as a fully qualified fingerprint expert, your day can be quite unpredictable.
Totally.
Yeah.
The biggest unpredictability about it was call-outs, like murders anywhere in the country. And like you could go into work on any one day and not know when you're going to get home. And that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Like we all went into work and got sent to all corners of the country because the Garda Technical Bureau did and still does cover the 26 counties of Ireland, of Southern Ireland. And any major crimes, any murders, suspicious deaths that occur where a senior investigating officer has requested assistance, a team from the Bureau would be sent or was sent to examine them. So you had to have your kit bag.
Yeah, we all had the kit bag ready there to go.
I actually still use mine. Still have it.
Probably the same stuff in mine now. I don't know where it is. But with that bit of unpredictability in what you're going to do, it can eat into your life outside the job. Yeah. And so sometimes sacrifices have to be made, like, you know.
Absolutely. Like, it's very hard to work in a section like that without the support of your family, especially if you have kids. Like the hardest calls I had to make were, I won't be able to collect the kids from school today. I'm going to Cork or wherever in the country. That was tough. And there was one that, like when I was thinking about this beforehand, the Christmas 2013, we had obviously Christmas time we'd be on call. And we were the unit on call that Christmas morning. So just in case that something happened, we had a Christmas dinner on on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So actually sat down and had a full dinner.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, 8:30 Christmas morning, I picked up my phone that I hadn't had in the bedroom. And since 2:30 a.m, there had been
trying to call you.
14 different missed calls, texts and everything to say there was a body in a house down in Courtown. So yeah, that was it. Gone for the day, gone for Stephen's the day, gone for the day after.
Yeah.
And I got caught for quite a number of jobs over the Christmas period, but that was it. Straight away, the first thing that you're thinking, right, I need all the information I can get about the actual scene. What are we going to face? Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? Is there cars involved? Is there blood involved? Because especially if it was a Dublin job, it's easy. You can go out to the job and you can come back within a short period of time to go back to the bureau to get whatever, any extra equipment that you might need, whether it be chemicals or powders or whatever else. But when you're going to the country, that's it. You have to bring everything with you that you need. Yeah. And you haven't got the liberty of just, listen, I'll go back up and collect something. So you have to switch on, as you said, and be ready for what's going to face you at the scene.
And then, like in later years, you would have been a sergeant by this stage. You might have taken on the role then as crime scene manager as well.
Well, I actually did my crime scene training in 2007, crime scene manager training in 2007. So I was actually acting as crime scene manager before I got promoted.
Right.
Promotion happened after the merge with FSI. So I didn't actually perform the role as crime scene manager as a sergeant. I can remember one particular case, it happened, I'm sure it happens to everyone, where I went as a crime scene manager on a job, but the fingerprint expert couldn't stay on the job, and we knew that at the start. So then I had to take over the role as the examiner and still perform the duties of crime scene manager. Yeah. And things can get complicated, and you just have to be calm and think about everything that you're doing.
Yeah. And then, sometimes people often think that forensic work, maybe because they've seen a lot of it on television or whatever, is all about dramatic breakthroughs. But, very often it's not. It's about gathering as much evidence and could be the smallest little details. From your experience, what matters most when you're at a scene, Well,
you remember the approach you arrive at a scene as part of a team, and always the routine was the photographer on the team carried out his duties, recorded all the establishing shots, all the route into if the body was still in situ, recorded absolutely everything he could with regard to that scene. The ballistics guy will be doing the trace evidence. Again, every scene is different, whether it be a car or house or windows or whatever else, or a body just in a field. And there has to be a methodical approach to, we often did bodies in the middle of a field. I can think of a few straight away. Look, you were thinking about footmarks in the mud, everything else. There might be all sorts of evidence that will be around the scene. So everything had to be done in a structured way. And as a fingerprint examiner, you're there to examine for fingerprints, you're also looking around.
But you're also aware of everything else that might be of, might be of importance. And so it's very much a collaborative thing that you're aware of, that everything has to tie together really. Like there's no one piece of evidence that's more important than the other from, the evidence gathering point of view. But
so the point I was going to make was that as the fingerprint examiner, you're letting the other guys and ladies, whatever, on the team do their work. So you're actually standing back, waiting.
Yeah.
Because obviously
there is a lot of waiting, yeah.
We can't do any of our powder and or chemical work because it's destructive.
Yeah.
So we have to wait for all the other, particularly ballistics, to be finished there before we can actually go at a part of a scene.
And it's the same, generally it's the same at post-mortems.
Oh, exactly.
That the fingerprint person was more often than not the last.
Like very often at post-mortems, I stayed out. I didn't go in till the very, very end. Or on occasion, I went back the following day.
Yeah.
And take the set of fingerprints.
I know I've made the mistake once or twice, and I did it with the late John Harbison, where he told me to come in and fingerprint the body while he was still working on it.
I met John when I was actually a student in Store Street because I was curious about bodies and death because my dad passed away when I was 6, so I always wondered about what happened. And as a student in Store Street, you were beside the old city morgue and the coroner's court. And I went in one day when he was doing postmortems they weren't state cases, so it wasn't like I was breaching a crime scene. I actually went in a few times during that 6-month period to look at a few different bodies that were victims of murder after the postmortem had happened, So I thought it would be good for me at an early stage of my career to get used to seeing bodies.
Yeah, be exposed to something like that.
Because like we come across death so often. Like I went to Tala and I was there a month on New Year's Eve, and I was getting calls from a concerned neighbour saying there was a party that was getting a bit rowdy and so on. And I said, Tala being so big with very few resources, it was hard to get a patrol car to them. And he rang a number of times, and in the end, someone got killed. A young fella got stabbed. There was a bit of a fight. And I ended up, when I finished my tour duty, having to go up to preserve the scene.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the emotion of me not being able to help prevent what's just occurred because I could not get a car.
You couldn't get a
command and control couldn't get a car, and there was so many different things going on that night. So
New Year's Eve, madness,
New Year's Eve, Halloween night, mad nights.
But I would think it's not something that you ever fully get used to. It's an assault on the senses going into any particularly nasty scene where there's bodies involved, or the same with postmortems and stuff like that. But like the work in general, you pretty much go into this mode.
Oh, yeah.
And okay, maybe for the first few minutes, your biggest concern is, am I going to hurl or not? But then it becomes, can I get a good set of fingerprints off the deceased?
Yeah.
The work takes precedence. Because, okay, I know what you were saying there earlier on about sometimes taking a set of fingerprints from a deceased person who's the victim of a crime, and therefore the injured party might be the only set of prints that you have for that person when you go searching through an entire scene where, through legitimate access, people have, handled objects and whatnot. So it's very important to keep the integrity of the exhibits or the evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So the system that we operated for the 20 years between when I joined Fingerprints and when we merged with Forensic Science Ireland, we had what we always called the crime scene to courtroom approach, where like that we went to the scenes, we gathered the evidence, we bagged it properly, obviously aware of all the DNA and other trace evidence that you're trying to preserve and trying not to contaminate things. And then some of those exhibits would be going to different sections within Forensic Science Ireland, as it was at the time. And the others we would be taking for ourselves to bring back and examine. We had different systems for logging them in the Bureau. We had the exhibit tracking system, then that was superseded by the PEM system that they have now at the moment. But you're always aware of the fact that every exhibit needs to be a chain of custody.
It has to be continuity.
Have to have continuity. We had our forms for handing things over. Like if you were if you were working on an exhibit where a finger mark was developed and you had to give it to the photography section to photograph it, back in the days when we still had film and not digital cameras, you're aware that everything that got handed from one person to the next person had to be handled properly.
There has to be a trail there because it's not enough to have a fantastic, say, fingerprint identification or some DNA evidence or blood or drugs or wherever it is. if somebody hasn't signed a form that can mean, that something gets thrown out in court because the chain of evidence is broken.
And very, very often the only evidence that they have is the fingerprint evidence or whatever other from the Bureau, from ballistics guys. So it's very important that we can stand over it and that it doesn't fall.
The next question there, some cases seem to turn on the very smallest of details, or small, like you say, a fingerprint, a small speck of blood maybe, or a fibre or a hair or whatever. In your experience, does that happen often?
Have you got all day?
Oh.
There's lots, yourself. There's we dealt with thousands of cases. There's one I can think of straight away where it was more, I would describe it as a bit of luck that actually helped in the identification. So there was a chap called David Daithí Douglas was murdered, I think it was 2017, in Dublin. And the culprits fled in a getaway car, which they burnt, and then got into another getaway car. So that car was discovered over on the south side somewhere, Ringsend or Sandymount or somewhere out that direction. And I wasn't at the original scene of the job. I took over from somebody else. So when I was examining it, I found a small finger mark on the inside handle on the rear passenger door, I think it was. So those small, the chrome handles. Very hard, you can powder them, but it's very hard to actually get your lifting tape in to remove a finger mark. So I asked the investigation team, which was led by the now current Deputy Commissioner Paul Cleary, got in contact with them and asked, would it be possible to get a mechanic to come to our examination centre to remove the panels so we can get the handle? Because obviously any evidence like that, if you have nothing else, you want to get everything you can. And the guy from, I don't know what garage he was from now, but he attended the following day. And I literally turned my back. I could swear it was only for 2 minutes. Turned my back and turned around again. And he had all the panels taken off all the doors, just like that. I said, what? How'd you do it that quick? Yeah. And he said, yeah, sure, it's easy enough for me. And that's it. Yeah. We're experts in our fields. Yeah. He's an expert in his field. And I always saw that, everyone's an expert in what they do.
Absolutely, yeah.
So because the panels were now taken off the doors, I said, you know what? Because the hard stippled plastic on the inside of a door. I said, sure, I can now bring this back to the lab and do the super glue fuming that we use for hard surfaces. And so I did. Brought it back, glued it, and then did the fluorescent dye on it. Quasar. Bang, lovely big palm mark is suddenly on the surface where you'd rest your arm and rest your hand. Yeah. So got it photographed, put it into the system, up number one, came back number one. All of a sudden, I had somebody identified. Now, obviously you don't know there and then that he is involved in the murder.
You just know they've been in the car.
Could be somebody that has been fingerprinted for some reason, for some other job. But when I contacted the investigation team, they knew straight away. They didn't know he was involved in the actual initial parts of the murder, but they knew, this is it. This is one of the team. And that was just luck.
So did you do that with every car afterwards, I wonder?
I didn't do too many cars after that. I actually did another, God, this is one thing. I did another car in relation to that job and got some marks on the rearview mirror. And I know we mentioned earlier about patterns when we were talking beforehand. And when I saw it, I said, it's sort of familiar. And then when I searched it on the system and it came back on the list of respondents, which suggests the computer's telling you what we think this might be, and you still have to do your manual comparison. But when I saw the number, I said, I know what this is.
and it wasn't the same.
Was a different person.
Something must have triggered in you that you'd seen that mark before.
Yeah, for what we said, looking at thousands of marks over the years, there are certain people who are high profile and we don't know who they are.
Because I remember myself when I started, and you probably did it as well, we used to search the bundles. So I was searching, volume crime from Cork. So we had copies of all the Cork-based criminals. This would be before all the motorways and stuff. People tended to stay close to home. But like that, you'd be going through these bundles every day, looking, if the marks were particularly bad that you weren't getting a hit on APHIS, you're going through these bundles. If you knew what finger it was, maybe you could take a guess. But like that, you would get familiar with certain people's fingerprints. And I know it sounds crazy because they're so small and stuff like that. But it's not that you memorize it in full, but something triggers when you see it. that I've seen that before, and it helps them when, serial burglars have scars on their thumbs and forefingers from pulling glass out of windows.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one particular burglar in North Dublin. We all used to get them all the time, and the same arches just kept popping up. And as soon as you see the arches on a crime scene mark from burglary, you say,
in North.
But I would say his name, you know exactly who it was.
Yeah,
and then when he was in jail for whatever sentence he get, everything went quiet for a while.
Yeah,
but I was involved in a great case back in 2005. But obviously not great for the guy that was killed now, but from an investigative point of view, and for me personally, professionally, the murder Noel Roach in 2005 out in Clontarf Road. It was part of the Crumlin Drumna.
I think he was shot.
Crumlin Drumna feud.
He was shot, wasn't he?
Yeah,
in
shot
the
in the car.
I remember when the call came in. Yeah, I think Noel Canning took the call. One of the sergeants there.
That case itself, that I've got a great identification in that, which resulted in the conviction, and the case was appealed, obviously, the whole way to the Supreme Court. So my opinion evidence was tested, because in that particular case, the prosecution counsel was Anthony Salmon, and I had developed, when we got the getaway car, which had been abandoned and not burnt out, we found in the back of the car, behind the driver's seat, a paper bag with the murder weapon, which was subsequently identified as the murder weapon through the ballistics work. And on that bag, I found 4 finger marks, and didn't meet what we at that time said was our 12 points of similarity threshold for presentation of court evidence. But Anthony Salmon wanted all those marks put in front of the jury, because he didn't want them to think that there's only one, because one mark had more than 12, the other 3 didn't. He didn't want them to think that one mark is the only mark on this bag. Yeah. That it was a chance that someone walking through a shop could have just touched it. This, because myself and the photographer on the case was Eric Feary, we produced an album where I actually put gloves on, and we replicated what the bag would have looked like with a heavy Glock firearm in it, and there was other things in it as well. Yeah. So we actually did a book of photographs showing how where the marks were made. So like my right thumb was where the right thumb was. I can't remember what the 4 marks
for
were.
The jury,
for the jury,
to demonstrate to them. Yeah.
So that actually that case evidence was accepted, and went to the whole way to the Supreme Court talking about the opinion evidence, and so it was great because they ruled that there was no basis in law or logic for this 12-point standard to exist. Yeah. So I personally really enjoyed working on that case. Yeah, and probably it leads into the next question there. And all of that work, all of that extra work that you and Eric, the photographer, did purely to show to lay people or even the rest of the investigation team and, the judiciary or whatever, how these marks would have been deposited and why they're in these positions. Maybe they were probably bits and pieces all over the place if it was a paper bag. But people don't see the amount of work that goes into that, that it's a structured process. And as you say, every case is different. Because I've seen cases before. I remember being on a case before, just a burglary, thumb mark on a plug in a burglary. And, the defence are arguing that, my client just picked this plug up while he was walking through Woodies or whatever it was. Now, this plug was an old 3-pin, rounded pin plug. It was about 30 to 40 years old. So, these little bits and pieces, but I hadn't done that investigative work about the plug. The arresting guard had. And this is just for a burglary, but he went that extra mile to be able to say, this plug was manufactured at such and such a year, such and such a year. There was no way for him to put his thumb mark on that unless he'd been in the house and unplugged the DVD player or whatever it is. So people don't see that stuff. And sometimes that can lead, very often with more serious cases, it means that a scene has to be held for a good period of time. Not just when the body is removed and stuff like that. Very often that's only the beginning. That case that I mentioned there, the Christmas Day case in 2013, that was Courtown. The post-mortem was in Waterford. And you might look at the map and geographically think Courtown to Waterford is not it's a short journey. When you're driving a crime scene van, I can tell you it's not. So literally, we went on Christmas Day, removed the body after everything was recorded. Body was brought down by the undertaker under police escort to Waterford Hospital. The next day was the schedule for the post-mortem, Stevens's Day. So we had to drive down there, spend the whole day down there, and then, I don't know what time it was late even when we finished. There was very little we could do on Stevens's night at the scene. So anyone observing that would be thinking, where are the guards gone?
guards
There's nothing happening here.
Yeah.
So it was actually the third day before we really got stuck into examining that scene. And I always remember, it was actually a funny little thing about it. We got our bathroom renovated a couple of years beforehand. As my wife would say, I have a habit of hanging on to things that I don't really need. And we had glass panels that the actual glass for the shower was delivered in these 6 foot by 3 foot cardboard sleeves type boxes. And I said, they'll come in useful sometime. And lo and behold, we had to remove the front door from the house in Wexford to bring it back to the scene. So we wrapped it, but we needed something to keep it safe and like that. So that we put on the outside. So when I was coming back down to the scene on day 3, I brought one of my
big cardboard boxes,
old cardboard boxes, and my wife said, "Yeah, well, maybe you're right.
Yeah,
some things are useful."
We all want our dogs to live the happiest, healthiest lives possible, but a lot of standard dog food out there just isn't cutting it. That's where Butternut Box comes in. Their mission is simple: to deliver health and happiness to dogs and their humans. They use high-quality, whole ingredients that are so good they've actually been taste tested by humans. When your dog starts eating better food, you see the results directly. More excitement at mealtimes, a shinier coat, and a much happier gut. It's not about being fancy, it's just about giving them real food that brings out the best in them. If you want to make the switch, head over to butternutbox.com/lines of enquiry. Use the promo code Lines of Enquiry at the checkout and they'll give you a massive 50% off your first 2 boxes. Your dog will thank you for it. We touched on it already, that from early on in your career in the job, you off your own bat, exposed yourself to bodies down in the morgue and stuff like that. But over the 25 years that you spent in the Bureau, you're obviously, death is a big part of the job.
Yeah.
And, do you think it affects you over time, or is it yet another example of being able to, switch between this is work and this is the rest of my life,
Yeah. It's not for everybody. Some people come in and left very shortly after when they realised what they were actually going to be facing. I said I was exposed to it early on. My first job in the Bureau was the death of, I think, a 6-month-old baby. Shortly after that, next job was the accidental shooting of one of our colleagues, John Eve, down in Abbey Leaks. And I remember 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing the post-mortem and I'm taking a set of prints from my colleague who was alive a few hours earlier. And I was in the morgue. I was in the morgue by myself with him. And I just remember talking to him.
Yeah.
And saying, sorry, John, I'm sorry what's happened to you. But I'm just here to do my job and I'll be as quick as I can. And I know he's passed away, but still...
No. I absolutely know what you're saying. And, I've said it before, and one of our colleagues you'd known well said it to me, Mick Keating, ex-ballistics man. And we were coming back from a job, wherever it was, and it was a stabbing or whatever. And I think the deceased mightn't have been, an angel in real life. And we were sitting there having pints and a steak dinner on the way back or whatever it was. I wasn't driving, by the way. And the talk turned to the job and to the deceased and stuff like that. But Mick was, he'd been around a long time at this stage. And some people might think, cynical and hardened and whatnot. And he says, it doesn't matter who they were. We're here to talk for them now, and it's a massive responsibility whether that person, was up to all sorts while alive or, as you say, a 6-month-old child, a former colleague. And I know I've spoken to you before, and we'll touch on it now in a minute, about your work, the work you're doing now with the job in Tuam, and I've spoke to one of our other former colleagues that's on that, and he said to me that somebody had said, "Oh, how can you do that?" And he said it's a privilege to do it. So I think it does affect you, but if it didn't affect you, I think I'd be more worried. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, the case in Clontarf, Noel Roach. I came across Noel when he was a young lad. He was from Sundrive Road, the station I worked in. I dealt with his brother, and unfortunately the two of them were murdered within a short period of time of each other.
Yeah.
I just did my job properly. I got justice for him.
Yeah.
And I remember when the jury came back and the culprit was convicted, I went for a drink with the investigation team in, I think it was Hughes, the local pub there beside the courts, and Noel's mum was there, and she shook my hand and she was like, thank you so much for, like, she was talking about the evidence I'd given and said, like, she was, I don't know what word to use actually, she was flabbergasted how well this had to come across, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, no, I'd, like, just do my job, you know, and we had a chat, and like, I didn't tell her I had dealt with her 2 sons before, because God love her, she'd after losing 2 sons. She didn't. You wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, in violent circumstances.
But when we're talking about death, there's one case that I've always, well, actually, sorry, there's more than one, but there's one that I always thought about that it was a weird one for me, in that this Chinese national, Zisong was his name, and he was killed at 5 o'clock in the morning one day. And like that, when we go into the bureau, first thing, job in, you're going, but this is a weird one, that the first thing we did was the post-mortem. So I hadn't even got near the scene. And I was there in the morgue at 11 o'clock in the morning thinking, this poor chap was asleep only a few hours ago. Like he was only stabbed because he literally walked out into the hallway of upstairs, and the culprit just literally stabbed him in the heart. I said, that was just sad, really sad, you know.
Very often, like that with a stabbing and stuff like that, there mightn't even be any really much evidence of injury or anything like that.
Yeah,
like,
just one stab wound.
And it's gone. It's so, like, I mean, it can just be gone in the fleet of an eye.
But one of the weird things about that case, when I say weird, it's probably not the right word again, but that culprit had armed himself with a knife and a meat cleaver when he broke into that house before he started going around the rooms to burgle it. But he'd also broken into a house a short time beforehand, another house down the road, and we got evidence that he had done the exact same thing. He'd gone to the drawer in the kitchen to arm himself with a knife when he was going around to break a house, and left that behind, then went to another house. He was never carrying a weapon on the street. Like, when he was in the house, that's his intention. Yeah. But
which is very unusual for a burglar, really.
Yeah. But I was at a presentation last week with a doctor or a colleague over in the UK, Dr. Alicia Nichols-Drew, and she's actually done research over knife crime for a number of years now, and like, she's in the news a lot recently because she's part of a campaign to get kitchen knives all turned into round tips, because over in the UK, over half of their knife crime murders are literally kitchen knives. Yeah,
I remember myself, I did a few jobs down in Limerick, and I think it was down there, and it might have been 2 jobs down there, but it was certainly 2 jobs I was on, maybe one back up here in Dublin, and it was the same knife in the same block of knives. No, not the exact same knife, but the same brand of knife from the same brand of block of knives that had been used in both of these stabbings, like, you know, and I had been on both of them.
The same as in the job in Wexford, the one that I've mentioned there twice. That knife, I saw that very same knife brought in 2 subsequent murders in the bureau in the following, I think, 12 to 18 months. I saw them down in our chemical room.
Yeah. But like, you've still got your foot in, well, I suppose I have my foot somewhat in the job in that I'm talking about it all the time, but you're still actively working. You're back with FSI on a
I work as a contractor
with FSI, and you've also, and I know you can only talk a little bit about it, but now you're working as an evidence manager with the Office of the Director of Authorised Intervention in Tuam. People might not know exactly what it's about.
So briefly, there was research done by a local person down there, Catherine Corliss, which was publicised in 2014, I think, and she had discovered that there were 796 children had passed away in the institution, and there were no burial records for them. So the excavation is the main thrust, really, is for us to excavate the site, what's left of the site, and hopefully recover as many of those sets of remains as we can, and give them
the proper burial. You're saying like the 796? In what time period are we talking?
Between 1925 and 1961.
So that's what, 40-ish years, but no burial records. So I wish you all the very best in that, Ray, and I know that yourself, Owen, Shane, I think.
Yeah, Shane from Ballistics, Shane Curran.
Yeah, couldn't have better guys down there doing that work. It's obviously a different approach. You're not going in there necessarily you're not looking for evidence of crime. It's a bit like
But if you did find it,
yes,
the coroner gets called in.
Yeah, is it more of an investigative thing rather than forensic?
Oh no, the team that's been assembled is the right word. there's been a process to get these people together. They're some of the top professionals you'd come across, forensic anthropologists.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
Osteoarchaeologists, even site coordinator, the boss on site, Ross, he's an amazing person. I'd sit and listen to him all day, but we can't because we have work to do.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. But it's a pleasure to work with them, but the forensic standards have to be applied. That's why it's useful for them to have myself and Owen and Shane there, because we have that background in forensics, because there's an ID program attached to this excavation where if they get samples of DNA from family members to compare against any remains that we do recover, that DNA can be obtained from them.
Yeah.
The bones can be so sensitive that we have to be really, really careful. So that's why we're the evidence managers, but we're not forensic consultants, because Dr. Niamh McCullough is our senior forensic consultant on site. But that's we're like that. If the guys have a question about forensics or about the suits that they have to wear, they come to us.
Yeah.
We do refreshers with them as well, to make sure everything is done right. But it's like being, I'd liken it to being at, we went on jobs for days, sometimes weeks. I know I was never away that long myself. Some people have been, but it's like being on one big long job. Just you're working with people from all around the world. There's guys from the UK, guys from Australia, America, Colombia, Canada, a lot of Irish people there, and it's a pleasure to work with them. And I'm actually really, really interested in what they do. We have forensic control of different areas within the site, and it's our job, myself and Shane, our responsibility to make sure the correct records are kept. It's a privilege, as Owen had said, to work with these guys and to see them in action, because the archaeological approach they bring to the site is just,
it wouldn't be something it'd be something that we wouldn't have been exposed to it before.
No. I worked on some body recoveries from graves and stuff. Not that many. Shane worked on more than me, but just to see their approach is just they're brilliant. I have to say they're so professional.
And is there any way people can contact the team if they've any information that might be helpful?
Yeah, if you go onto the ODAT website, which is odait.ie, and what we do is the section, there's information about the ID program there. And if you scroll down on that page, there's information about how to contact ODAT to establish if you're an eligible person to give DNA, and how you'd go through the application process. And we've had members of the team traveling around the world actually already to take DNA samples from persons.
It sounds to me as if you're busier now than you were before you retired from the Guards.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but you're
great. Love it.
Yeah, you're loving it. That's the main thing, because you've been very lucky in that you have been able to bring the skills, and you're still adding to those skills, which is brilliant.
But
and
I have to say, my exit plan for the Guards started in 1994. We were the first crew, the first training cohort to do the diploma in police studies back then.
We're among the early ones anyway.
When I did that, I made sure that I got a high enough mark, because we got exemptions towards the Institute of Public Administration Administration of Justice degree.
Right.
So I did that then. And I've done foundation degree in fingerprint identification since, postgraduate diploma in crime scene investigation. I did all these courses.
I never did any of these things. I did nothing.
But anything that come up, I said, right, I'm doing this, because when I get out at the end, I loved fingerprints. I still do.
Yeah.
And I said, right, I want to stay in this area. So while the work with FSI is brilliant and it's fingerprint related, everything else I do isn't really fingerprint related. But I had that exit strategy that I want to get out when I'm young. I was able to leave the Guards when I was 51.
Which is fantastic, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. But I've also do other things. I'm doing some transition year workshops with kids as well.
All right.
So that's really fun.
It sounds to me as if you're nowhere near finished, near a point where you're going to hang up your magnifying glass or whatever. But in your experience over the years, what has stuck with you? What was your highlights? Was it the people? Was it the work? Was it, I don't know, or a combination of everything?
Well, the easy answer is to say we were giving victims of crime a voice. We were doing our best. When you join the Guards, you swear an oath without fear, favour, malice or ill will. And that's the approach you have. From a fingerprint case point, if you know that the mark you have from the crime scene is not the suspect, well, that's the evidence you give. You tell the investigating team, because you're not going to hide or suppress that. That's not your job. Yeah, well, your job is to actually do your job.
It's every bit as important to exonerate people as it is to
absolutely. We might talk a bit about, as I said, the warm fuzzy feeling and wanting to get to identification. Of course we do. We want to get that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we want to do our job properly. So giving victims of crime a voice and getting justice for them is probably the most satisfying part for me, I have to say.
And I know, Ray, you've spoken about never knowing what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Maybe a call will come in and you're gone for a couple of days, maybe even longer. So obviously there's sacrifices to be made.
Well, there's one I think of immediately all the time when I'm asked that question, because it does come up regularly. But in 2004, I was working on a murder. A body was found in Walterstown in Dunboyne, but the murder had actually happened in Cluny. And so we examined the scene, and then we examined the scene where the body was located. The investigation team discovered where the incident happened, so we processed that scene. And so that was over a number of days on the post-mortem as well. It was in the middle of it. But on the way back to Garda headquarters, and it was about 7:30 in the evening, we, myself and the crime scene manager, went to the takeaway to get a bit of dinner, because I was due to go to the Metallica concert that night. And and as we pulled away from the takeaway, his phone rings, and I just said, no. And lo and behold, didn't somebody discover the getaway car abandoned down the strawberry beds?
Right.
So off we had to go to examine the getaway car, and I missed the Metallica concert. But I'm gone out of the guards now, and they played again the weekend just gone, and I was delighted to be there with my son, because I was 15 when I went to see them first, and he was there at the weekend with me for the two concerts.
And what age is he now?
He's 15 now.
He's 15 now, so
Cormac, he's delighted that a job didn't take me away from that.
22 years ago, and you haven't been able to let it go.
No.
I'd be the same now, but maybe not Metallica, maybe something else, but we'd see.
Well, when my daughter was born, I actually missed the 2008 concert as well, because she came 9 days early. So I missed him twice.
Very good.
Anyway.
But listen, it's been fantastic having you in, Ray, and we've a lot of shared experiences, and you've got some incredible work that you're doing now that I'd love to pick your brains about, but maybe some other time. But thanks again, Ray. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here. It's great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lines of Enquiry Case Notes. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review, sharing it to your story on social media, leaving a comment below, or simply telling a friend you enjoyed it. Your support helps us make more episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email linesofinquiry@goloudnow.com. Lines of Enquiry is presented by me, John Sweetman. The podcast is created by Darren Cleary. Our executive producer is Owen Brennan. Aoife Plunkett is our producer. Remember, in the end, everything done in the dark comes to light.